All right. Hey, Mary. So today we're talking about the third part of our multifaceted resiliency plan, and we're on to emotional processing. And I feel like this has been something that's been really talked about lately, and it's something that needs a little more explanation, especially when it comes to optimizing our brain function and what's actually going on in our brain. And a huge part of this, of course, is stress management. So let's dive in about what's happening in our brain. How do we really optimize it? How do we increase productivity and focus in regards to emotional processing and stress?
Right. So important, right? And so prevalent now, especially in this time of COVID. So a lot of folks are finding day to day their work life and being at home is just, crazy. So it's creating a lot of stress. So when we have stress, we have certain chemicals and neurochemicals in the brain that go up, so we have higher levels of certain stress hormones and certain, what we call neurotransmitters, like the chemicals that help nerves talk to each other. So because of that, because those levels are higher, the nerves themselves can't like connect as well, and they don't kind of repair as well. And the way that's been measured is something called neuroplasticity. So nerves being able to repair and grow and work well might be less because those hormones and those chemicals are at that high level. The other thing we see with stress, as we all have felt, is like our heart beating,
Mm.
our heart rate is up, and our blood pressure can be up. And if we think of a lovely garden up there as our brain, we don't want all that pressure of the blood up there, right? So we want just a nice, healthy blood flow. But if it's always pounding, pounding, I mean, we know what a headache is like because of that. But even the tissue or the organ of the brain itself with too much blood flow, pounding, pounding, it's bad for the cells. So the cells, if you think of them as getting washed by the blood and nutrients coming to the cells by our blood flow, if it's just high pressure, it can't really like soak in all the good nutrients. That's something called cytotoxic, so it can actually hurt the cells. And one way to measure that is something called telomere length. So all our chromosomes have this little end on it called the telomeres, and we can assess how like chemically old we are, as opposed to like what our birth age is. Our cells can tell us what our internal environment is like. So stress matters for all of those things, like how nerves connect, how healthy they are, how they can repair, and then the cells themselves. Because in the brain, we don't only have nerve cells, we have other cells that help our nerves. So if there's just too much pressure and they can't absorb all the good nutrients we've eaten for breakfast, hopefully, and that kind of thing, it hurts the cells. So cytotoxic. And then we can measure that actually by the telomere length, which is part of our chromosome inside the cells. So if the cells are always high pressure, high stress, you can tell because your chromosomes look older. So there's a lot of reason to, number one, figure out what stress is for you and what stresses you, and name it, and also to learn about emotions, right? So emotions are just that. They are just something you can name and you can feel, and you can realize that at one point in time you can have 10 emotions at the same time. It doesn't mean you have one and then you'll have one in an hour. You could at one point have a lot of emotions. So the term emotional processing means that we learn to name it, to feel it. And if we can't name it, sometimes, people will sketch or draw just to kind of get it out, or just acknowledge, like, I'm having a lot of feelings about this. And then you might want to see, like, what just happened. It's just putting like a little thought into some of these patterns that you might see. So if you say, I always feel this feeling when I'm with this person, or every day around this time I get this feeling, so you can kind of back up a little bit and say, what did I just do, or what didn't I do, or did I have a good breakfast, what happened in that meeting? Were there a lot of emotions that I just never named and they're all still in there? They just need to be kind of unpacked. So sometimes, there's a lot of resources to help us learn how to emotionally process. And a simple one is to just think of, them as, just thoughts floating by, or imagine them as fish floating by, or balloons. You just put a name on it and let it go, and realize that emotions will come and go. They don't have a lot of power to them just by nature, but they can if we just let them build up and we don't realize patterns in our days. So we have to think of the organ of the brain itself as something that needs support so that we have productive work days. So if we realize, my gosh, always by 11, I'm toast. I've been in these darn meetings. I schedule myself all day like I might have today, just meeting after meeting after meeting. I didn't even get up and stretch. I didn't have water, so you might realize, oh yeah, here's how I can kind of backtrack, and I need these things to support myself in a good productive work day because I have all these, 9 billion neurons up there with a lot of cells supporting them that need some protection, and they don't want all that high blood flow because they want to repair naturally. We naturally repair if it's a prime environment, right? I mean, there's been some interesting studies also looking at animal models when they're constantly stressed, stress, stress. And there's unfortunately some studies where they just stress mice or rat or whatever, and chronic stress that their behaviors change. So, and we know that in humans, and we know that in coworkers that they're always stressed and they're not fun to be around, right? So, I almost think of it like a valve, like let the steam out. Let just even if you don't have the answers to why it's there or what caused it, just name it and let it and just know it's there and move on, or see a pattern in your day. Like I can't do, 10 Zoom meetings in a day without getting up and stretching or writing or start my day with journaling or exercise or just do a desk stretch for, 5 or 10 minutes. Because sometimes we just don't think of our biology, just what we're made of, and we're not, there's limits, So I would say naming the emotions and watching your work patterns, your work day patterns. If you notice you just can't handle a meeting at 2, well, we all have these we have our energy level throughout the day. We have to acknowledge that our biology is what it is. So it can be as simple as, having a worksheet next to you and you're just writing down, I don't know why I feel angry, tired, frustrated, scared. I just feel these things right now.
That's
That's
enough
it.
to regulate and
Sometimes
set out.
that's enough. Just
Yeah.
say it,
And
or
is
if you're
there
always upset about at a certain meeting, like what is happening in that meeting that I'm because
right,
sometimes it's it's not a something that was spoken, it was a feeling, and that meeting is frustrating and you have to kind of think about it a little bit or talk to a coworker or a safe coworker about it. Why is that meeting so frustrating?
totally. And is it enough for our brain? Is it enough to start now? Like, if you start
Yeah.
now, does it matter? Like, as far as should you, I mean, of course, earlier the better, but
Yeah.
like a little bit matters. Can you speak to how much or what is,
Yeah, because we could sorry, I got my little friend. Yeah, so we can change our blood pressure, right? So if we learn, there's something called biofeedback where we just kind of learn how to calm ourselves down. Sometimes it's just as simple as telling our brain, like, we're in our happy place. Just close your eyes, imagine you're on vacation on a beach. You actually can kind of change, your blood pressure and your pulse. So
physiology?
that way, your cells are getting a better flow and they're able to absorb nutrients and things. So you can do that. I mean, there's a lot of studies showing, we hear a lot about mindfulness, like just being here, not worrying about what's coming the whole afternoon. You can be prepared for your day, but you can just be here right now, only here. And this is where your focus is. Um, so there's a lot of ways to achieve that. And one of those sometimes is just deep breathing,
Yes.
close your eyes, cool off a little, write down an emotion. So it's not like rocket science, but it really can change kind of the environment of where our nerves are in there. And
Mm.
if we want to have a productive work day, these are tools that are easily accessed. They're cheap, they're free, they're available to us. And, it'd be silly not to use them,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
think you're explaining so much of what we think we should do and how much it matters. And I think it's putting the science behind like the should, which is an amazing pair because you hear like, oh, you should be more mindful, you should be, less stressed and all that. But it's kind of like, okay, I know I should, but what's actually happening in my brain and like why should I? So I think that having that deeper understanding of what's actually happening to your cells and to the way that your brain is made up is so hugely important in tying the reasoning, that we are constantly seeing things for what to do for stress management and things, but we're also like, I know I should do that, but it hasn't quite sunk in as to why I need to. So that's huge.
Right.
I understand
And
that.
you're right. I think it can have really immediate effects, like good effects, like you can break it, like you can enhance and influence your physiologic state. So you can work on your blood pressure, breathing, your pulse rate, you can cool down. And then there's ways to kind of prepare for it ahead of time, right? So you can also get a really good night's sleep the night before so that when we have good, healthy sleep, a good 7 to 8 hours, we can regulate our emotions better. We can obviously have a better executive function, better thinking. So, if we say, oh, these days, these COVID days are tough, they're really tough. I need to do everything I can to prepare for these days. Well, these are some tips you can do right now at your desk, or, you know, get a good night's sleep, or prepare for your day a little bit with some exercise. And then, like you said, there's long-term benefits too, even if you make a change today, because when we talk about the chromosome age, like you're talking about your age, you're like your life expectancy, so stress matters, so it matters today in our work performance, but it also matters for our longevity and our long-term health and the health of our chromosomes, right, which help us make more cells. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to learn about it and start some things today.
That's hugely helpful. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome.